Um, all right. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I know people are going to be joining kind of in the next 5 to 10 minutes, but we want to make sure that we're getting all the time that we can with Preston throughout this presentation. So welcome. My name is Sarah McAllister. I'm the Senior Associate Director for Alumni Career and Professional Development. And Nina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi all. My name is Nina. I am the assistant director in the same department that Sarah is in. And I'll be kind of all things tech today. So if you have any questions, if you need help with, anything with your sound, just direct message me. I've got you.
Perfect. So I'm going to go over a few just housekeeping things. And while I'm doing that, I would love for you all to introduce yourselves in the chat and let us know where you're joining from. It's always nice to see kind of where across the country and the globe people are joining from. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, that would be great. So this session is being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. We have over 70 recorded sessions of past PDS. So if you're not familiar with the YouTube channel, Nina's going to drop that link in the chat, and we encourage you to check it out. If you want to get notified of new sessions, you can go ahead and subscribe as well. So our topic today is Executive Leader Framework based on Jim Collins' B 2.0. And so Preston Law is a engineering grad and I'm really excited to learn from him. He's going to guide us through about 40 minutes of content and some frameworks and things like that. And then also at the end, we'll have time for questions. If you think of a question as he's presenting, feel free to put it in the chat, and then we'll come back to that when that time comes. So with that, I'd love to have Preston, if you want to introduce yourself. Thank you for being here, and really excited to learn from you today.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. My name's Preston Law, and like Sarah said, I graduated from the School of Engineering in 1988, and I started my first software company when I was a senior at Tulane, and that was in the medical billing world. And I got out of that after about 10 years and went on to start another company, which was also healthcare related in clinical connectivity. And then that grew to another company, into another company. And eventually I wound up being a software engineering leader of about 4 or 5 different product lines. And that was where I really started learning about leadership and how to grow teams and those sorts of things. I had between 200 people working on a product, and at the largest I was about 2,000 people, and at the smallest it was me. So I kind of ran the whole gambit there, and I'm now consulting, doing leadership and process improvement consulting, and a whole slew of other things that just kind of interest me, like cybersecurity, and trying to get my hands dirty in some software development as time goes on. But this is all about leadership, and it's one of the programs that we put together at Assured Strategy, which is a professional executive coaching company that I was actually a client of before I started being one of the coaches on the staff there. So with that, I think I will get rolling. And there we go. So this is me, Preston Law. There's my LinkedIn and phone number. I'm lucky enough on LinkedIn to actually just have it be my name. So you can reach me there. I welcome everyone to reach out. I'm open to talk about this or anything else. So in Jim Collins, which he's a great author. If you haven't read some things by him, I highly recommend it. And one of his books is called B 2.0. So entrepreneurship is like starting a business and then going beyond starting your business and growing it is what we refer to as 2.0. So, if we look at like Steve Jobs when he was younger, he was notorious for being temperamental, demeaning, and having outbursts. People thought he was immature, and I think that's probably why he got pushed out of Apple. But when they brought him back in, uh, his leadership effectiveness had grown. Like he had grown along with the company, and they say, hey, he became a genius with 1,000 helpers. So as he grew, that was part of his success. So the success was driven by his growth. His growth was not driven by his success. So what is your 2.0? So like for me, that was when I had a realization that I had hired all these people, but I was still doing all the work. And so that was a big moment for me to realize that, and I said, hey, I have to let people do what they do. And even if they're not going to do it the same way that I'm doing it, I have to let them take it up their way. But then really, it's as a leader, which is different than being a manager, you have to get people to want to do what must be done. And I think the key there is giving people a roadmap, getting them to understand where we're going, and let them define their own path along the way. So if you look at this picture of going up the mountain where you have your BHAG way up on the right there, which is the big, hairy, audacious goal. That's really where we want to go. But we're going to get there through a 3-year target, which is kind of in the middle. And then there's a road that brings us from the start to 90 days to a year. But the point here is giving people a roadmap. They know where we're going, and they can understand that as we get down into some of the valleys that we may have to change the road. The road may be closed, or it may be washed out, and we're going to have to trudge across the grass or through the forest to get there. So if we put this into more business speak, we say, we're going to catalyze a clear and compelling vision that's shared by the group that can be acted upon. And that's the function of leadership. And then your style is unique to each individual. So the way that I would lead a team and the way that someone else would lead the team are different. And different doesn't mean bad. Okay, different is just different. There's different ways to get things done. Okay, and allowing those different ways of getting things done is really important in the growth of a company. One of the tools that we use at Assured Strategy, and a lot of management methodologies start with this, is a DISC assessment, which is a psychological assessment that will break your behaviors down into 4 areas. So it's DI, S, and C. And depending on how you look at things, you could be a high D, right? You have a high ego. These are the people who are, a lot of times salespeople, founders of companies. They're really impulsive. Some people say these are the ADHD kids wind up here. Okay, in I, so that's decisive. In the I, in interactive, you're really friendly. You won't discuss business, but these people are good coaches. And then in your high S, well, these are the stabilizing people. So they're shy, slow to make changes, but your high S's, although they're slow to make changes, once they bought into a change, they become your agents of change. And then in the high C's, they're really tied to process. So if the process says do something, they're going to do it, and they're really ruled by the logic of the process. But like in any business, in any company, you need people in all of these areas. Okay, like I am a high S and a high I, but I am one of the most indecisive people in the world. Please, going out to dinner and placing the order is something that I'm like, okay, this isn't a big deal. Just order something. And but it was a problem for me for a long time. So with that, with those profiles, there's also what Jim Collins came up with, which is the 7 elements of effective leadership style, and that's what I'll start going over now. And understand that the 7 elements and your DISC profile, like your behaviors, are interacting, and they're going to interact all the time, whether you're at work or not at work. These things are always in place one way or another. And if you want to be a leader, this is one of the things. If you want to be a leader, and you're asking me, hey, should I be a leader? Well, it just depends. Okay. First, you have to be authentic. I was actually at a networking event last night for another university. It's okay. And they were talking about who should I put into my network? Who are the people I should connect with? And they've said across the board, all the people on the panel were saying that connect with someone who you can be authentic with. If you're not authentic with them, it's not gonna make sense. So we can look at here, Phil Knight, the CEO of Nike. He was not a cheerleader, okay, but he was real, he was passionate, and his actions followed the words that he used. We look at Sam Walton, famously, he always flew coach, had an old car, and he lived the values of the company, which was, hey, we're gonna be frugal as a company and provide. I can forget exactly what he says, but provide a place where everybody can get good products. And then Wendy Kopp, who's the founder of Teach for America, again, shy, reserved, and she said that no matter from what family or neighborhood, every single kid deserves a shot at solid education. So again, being passionate and authentic about what she believes in was the thing that made her an effective leader in the business. So being authentic is being yourself. Okay, within your profiles, there are things you're going to have strengths and weaknesses in. And, if you get rid of all your weaknesses, you're going to get rid of all your strengths too. So you don't have the strength without the offsetting weakness. It's a yin and yang thing. And a lot of people say, oh, I need to fix these weaknesses. I need to be in the higher D level. I need to be more decisive. Well, no, because if you move to that, you're going to lose the areas where you're good in the areas that you're good in, and you're not going to be authentic. Okay. The next thing is, as I've talked about, not being decisive. You do need to have some level of decisiveness. So it's about, for me anyway, it was about intuition and going to the heart of the problem to make the decision. So it's more like, don't get involved in analysis paralysis. Okay. There's a thing in the Navy where they talk about, look, the captain can be wrong, but the captain cannot be indecisive. And that's a very important thing. So clearing away the clutter, all these long lists of pros and cons, zero in on the problem and say to yourself, what's the essence of what we're looking at? Okay, without all these details, what is the important thing? And I was listening to a lecture this week as well, and as you can tell, I'm like really into always continuously learning. Is someone leader was saying she gets so many reports with so much data. She's like, I don't even know what I'm looking at. And she'll reply to people and she'll just say, simplify this. Okay. So you don't need to dwell on all of the attributes and complexities that are there. Drill down into what the problem is. Yes, data is very important to understand the problem, but data is not the be all and end all of what you're trying to do. And even Albert Einstein said, you know, the real valuable thing is your intuition. So your intuition will more often than not take you in a good direction, and using some of the data, looking at the problem and getting that to back up your intuition is, I think, a more effective way to get through being decisive rather than starting the other way on it. And you know, you have to be aware of fear coming in and stopping you from making that decision. So one of the ways I get through this is to say, well, if only one thing could happen, or if I'm making a decision amongst a number of things, it's like, well, if I could only have one of them, what would that be? And that's a question that I challenge the staff with a lot too, is, well, there's 10 things we want to put into a software release. And we have to have all of them. And you have to say, no, well, if we could have one, what would it be? And man, that is a really, really hard question to answer. But that way, it will drive you to make that decision. And, you know, Steve Jobs, too, said, look, he doesn't mind being wrong. People are wrong all the time. It matters is that we're executing, we're doing the right thing with based on all the information that we have right now. And that's where you have to get. And you know, being decisive is about bringing yourself through a decision tree which has all these leaves, all these arms, and it's like all this data coming through, okay, to kind of filter down through the trunk to get you to the root. And in this mode, you can get tied up, okay? And in this mode, there's a lot of people involved. There's people that you've delegated work to. You're trying to get consensus. People are participative or they're not. Some people are autocratic here or they're not. And if you're up in the leaf and branch area, you know, if they're wrong, they won't hit. It's not going to make that big of a difference. Okay, it's not going to kill the tree. And once you get down to the root, these are decisions that could kill the tree. But most of your work that you do is up in that upper area. Okay. Like a root decision. Hey, Apple decided they were going to go all in on, you know, the AirPod and have their own music library. Turned out to be a fantastic decision. But there's, for every one of those, there were bad decisions that they made, which were more up in the arm and even trunk area. So it's okay to make a bad decision, but be decisive. Next thing is focus. I had for a long time a framed picture on the right on the desk at the office, where right when you walked in the front door, and it was all blurry in the background and it just had one word on it, focus. I wanted to remind everyone when they came into the office, focus on what we're doing here. First things first. And the Peter Drucker, first things first, second things second, and so on. One of the best project management tools I had was in the 80s. I had a piece of paper, I would fold it up to fit in my shirt pocket. I'd write down the things I wanted to do for the day, and at the end of the day, I would flip it over and start, write down the things I didn't get done. And more often than not, by the time I got to the next day, those things I didn't get done were no longer important. So it's not working long hours because your time is finite. Okay. You should manage your work, manage your time. Don't let your work manage you. So a lot of people will start the day with going through their calendar and, okay, I got to do this, 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 and this. But if you start your day by not first looking at your calendar, looking at what are my priorities for the day, that will allow you to then go into your calendar, and you should, and then have the freedom, especially as a leader, to say, we're not going to look at this today. Okay. And that can be very frustrating to people because they've done some work and now, oh, we're not going to use that. Well, things change, and this is no longer a priority. And when I have to do that, I tell people, look, I'm really sorry. I made a mistake. I know that you put in a lot of work on this. That doesn't devalue your work. It is a decision that I made, that we, a lot of times we all made. And now we realize, what, we need to change. And, nothing is more of a waste of time than continuing on this path where we'll never use what you've come up with. So the next element is a personal touch. And, there's a bunch of things you can do for the personal touch. Writing a personal note, knowing people's names, and being engaged, being present, especially in meetings. On the the remote meetings and Zooms, a lot of people will not turn on their camera, or you can tell they're doing other things, they're not engaged. And if I tell people, I say, look, if you're not engaged and you're here because someone told you should be here, don't be here. Okay. That's really important, because what that says to the rest of the people on the call is that I care. I care about them. I care about their time. In Mrs. Fields, okay, she threw out $600,000 worth of cookies because they weren't right. So what are you gonna do? HP, they had there's a bolt cutter story where Bill Hewlett was working on a weekend on a radio antenna, and he saw at the end, you know what? This is no good. And he just cut with the bolt cutter, cut it off, and said, hey, this is not good. I spent a lot of time. It's not wasted time because I learned not to do it the way that I did it, but it's making that decision on, okay, I'm not going to do this. And that's also, and some of these things cross over. So, having that personal touch is to say, look, I made this mistake. It's being vulnerable, to this, the new buzzword of the last 5 years, right? Be vulnerable as a leader. And this will really go a long way in your personal growth, but also growing the rest of your team. And the people, I'll toot my own horn here. The people that have been on my teams have consistently moved up in the organization, and they move up by being a pragmatic, no nonsense, and fair person. So that's, my personal touch. Yours can be different. But the most important thing is that you are authentic, going back to number one, that you are authentic in how you're doing the personal touch, because people will see right through it if you're not. Okay. And I'm not talking about, sending people, trophies or, a little Starbucks card. It's, it's the intent behind it. And a handwritten note, even in the digital age, and especially I would say in the digital age, goes a lot further than a gift card. And it doesn't cost you anything other than your time, and it shows that you care much more. So the next item is hard and soft people skills. So it's a paradox of hard skills and soft skills. So you have to care personally, challenge directly, be fair, right? Be caring, but also challenge people. And if you're challenging people, a lot of times leaders will get into being, insincere and saying, "Hey guys, this is great. Good job, everybody." And someone says, "Good job, everybody." Well, there's two words that we would say in New Jersey and in New Orleans and probably everywhere else that would be is kind of my knee-jerk response to that. But so they know when you're not being sincere. If you can get good results in the short term by being obnoxious and really aggressive at a team. You can get things done, right? They're going to get things done. They're going to get things done. And one of the things they're getting done is applying to jobs on LinkedIn while they should be doing their work. And the other part of that, the other paradox here is being too empathetic. Okay, when you're too empathetic, you're not helping the person. Like I can understand someone's frustrations and their problems and, oh, they can't get this done and so on and so forth. And just being there and saying, yeah, I understand. I really understand. And you let that be an excuse for someone not to get some work done. And you let them live in the world of can't, instead of being honest with them, moving over into radical candor and saying, okay, I hear you. All you're telling me all the reasons why you can't do it. Let's work together and say, well, why don't we change that can't because into can if? Okay, that's the difference in being empathetic and being candid with someone about the problem, whatever it may be. Okay. And it's hard when you're holding people to high standards and they go to great lengths to do that, and you can make them feel good about themselves, what about they're capable of achieving. That's a soft skill part of it. And you know be candid with people, and also take feedback. And when you're taking feedback, it's the thing that you should say is thank you for your feedback. Period. End of story. Okay. In the back of your head, you're thinking, oh, well, that was because of blah 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 blah. That doesn't help, and that doesn't encourage people to give you more feedback. Feedback can be right or wrong. Okay, we say take your feedback, put it in your feedback bag, and then periodically pull it out. Something could be reactive. Yeah, you're right. We should switch. Shouldn't change it. Thank you for your feedback. And maybe you change it then. Other times it's, thank you for your feedback, and you move on. I think a couple of my slides were out of place. So that's my own feedback. All right, so that's the part of this on hard and soft people skills. The next element is communication. So communication is saying things over and over and over and over again. And I feel that when people start saying to me what I've been saying to them, and a lot of times thinking it's their own idea, that's when I'm like, okay, finally I have communicated that to the company or to my team. And or if they say, can you stop telling us that? I say, well, why do you think I'm harping on this? Because I'm not seeing you say it back to me. You're not mirroring this back to me. So one of the this guy, Doug Stone, that's not his picture, was the CEO of this company, Personal CAD Systems. And he noticed that, well, what he would do is he would go around to different offices and he would draw stuff on flip charts and little scraps of paper. And he was always putting the things, all this little stuff all around the company. And people asked him, finally said, why do you keep doing this? And he said, look, I'm doing this because I want to leave little hints all around as to where the organization is going, what we're doing, how that person can do their part in getting the company where it needs to be. So I guess it's kind of like subliminal things. Like I said, hey, the focus picture walking into the office. Those sorts of things are really important in getting people involved. Now, the other picture here is some people may know this as the CIA triad, which is part of cybersecurity. And so, like pictures like this showing where you are as a business, here's the route, here are the things that build upon it. So in the triad, which is the basics in cybersecurity, have around them communications, communication methodologies, hardware and software. And then around that, you have like physical security, which is like locking the door of the office, your personal security, having your phone lock, having if you have a work from home, that you have a lock on your door. And then we go, and that's surrounded with the organizational security of what are the things we're doing as an organization. So in your team, using a visual like this, doing where you're giving people post-it notes. This is, a reminder of this is where you are. And of course, don't just take the post-it note and stick it there, but as part of a conversation, write down one thing. Okay. Use real language when you're communicating. Okay. So to say something like, it's our policy to maximize the value chain and quality vector for all our malt beverage products. okay, is really, we make a great beer. Okay. You don't have to use a lot of words. The fewer words you use, the easier it is to communicate. And by the way, ChatGPT is really great for this. You can ask it, I need to communicate this to a sixth grader. Please take this and put it in at a sixth grade reading level. Another thing here's another example. The matter at hand is the reduction of financial resources due to litigation specific economic predation. I can't even say it. So lawsuits are costing us a lot of money. So if you find yourself, this is not the place for SAT words. Okay. And this is a place for simple words, simple things. We say call a duck, mind for conflict, encourage people to speak up in regular language and not in this, this corporate babble speak. And I'm sure, you can follow tons of people on Instagram and TikTok who just, they're making a living basically on making fun of corporate babble speak. So try to be simple in your communications. And the last piece of this, of the 7 elements of leadership, is ever forward. So I don't know how many of you have read the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But if you have, habit 7 there is really the same as habit 7 here. In the 7 habits, they call it sharpening the saw. Here he calls it ever forward. Okay, no matter how good you are at anything, there's always room for improvement. Like Tom Brady went to practice every single day, right? He's practicing the same things, taking the snap, throwing the pass, handing the ball off. Okay, the basics. If you're, a lot of, sports coaches talk about fundamentals. The better you get at your fundamentals, the more automatic those become. And then when you have things that are outside of that fundamental skills, you can move into that next skill set, and then that also becomes part of your fundamentals process. So it's not it's not that you're doing something because you're getting better at something because you're bad at it. You're getting better at something that you're good at. You're increasing your strengths. And Abraham Lincoln famously said, if he had 6 hours to chop down this tree, he'd spend the first 4 hours sharpening the saw. So that's kind of an analogy that we use when talking about sharpening the saw. So those are the all of the 7 elements: authenticity, decisiveness, focus, personal touch, hard and soft people skills, communication, and ever forward. Just trying to get better as you go along. So that kind of brings us to the end. I'll do a couple of plugs here. We have a number of free offers at Assured Strategy, from one-on-one coaching sessions to process gap assessments. I believe there's 4 or 5 different items on there. Again, it's assuredstrategy.com, and you don't have to remember free dash offers. You'll be on the main menu, and you can always reach out to me directly. I'm happy to help, especially fellow green waivers. I have to say, my father taught for over 50 years in the chemical engineering department, and my brother, sister, uncle, grandfather. My grandfather played on the last national championship football team at Tulane. So I'm, all in on Tulane, and I'm happy to help because this is also my way of sharpening the saw. Okay, every time I go through, or if I give this presentation, or I'm working on a process improvement project, every time I do it, it helps me. So there's also, and these are on the Assured Strategy website as well, some webinars. If you want to put up with me again, I'm doing the one on November 14th, going from cash strapped to cash rich. And then there are some workshops that we have at different areas around the country. About once a quarter, those come up, and those are 2 days in person. The webinars are free. The workshops have a little bit of a registration fee. So do we have any questions?
Thank you, Preston. This has been just really helpful and insightful. And so we do have one question so far. How do you see leadership evolving as the workplace goes global?
Well, I spent about 10 years with a global team that was spread out from the East Coast of the US to Texas to LA to 2 separate offices in India and offices in Northern Ireland. And I would say the leadership that I learned during that time was all the same things. It's all that leadership is leadership, regardless of which culture you're in. But there's also a great book that I'll share here. It's called Riding the Waves of Culture by one person's name that I can't pronounce, and Charles Hampton Turner. And this book has a lot of great things in it about how different cultures react to different things. So some cultures like a more kind of in your face, instructive, okay, or they don't want to be what should I say? They don't want to be interrupted when they're talking. So you have to make sure to let them finish. And also the biggest thing, I think, going back to where I was talking about, you need people in each of those quadrants of the disc profile, that you leverage those strengths culturally and support those strengths when they're not so strong, to bring them up to being more of a global team, and to understand where your market is. So it so happened that all of those people were working at things for the US market, so they had to understand that. So that's, I think, to sum it up, realize that people are different, but those seven things that we talked about today that make a good leader are really universal. It's just how you communicate is a little bit different. Okay, how you be authentic is a little bit different.
Great, thank you.
So what was the next question?
Yeah, so the next question is, what modern leaders do you admire and who inspires you?
Well, I really admire Elon Musk. He's, no nonsense, says it like it is, and I appreciate that. I someone that does inspire, but who I don't really personally like that much, is Mark Zuckerberg. But what inspires me about him is the way that he's able to take a huge company, and every year or 2 years really heavily focus the direction of the whole company into a new place. And that's really, that to me is something that I'm like, okay, how do I get, 200 people all going in the same direction, or 2,000 people all going in the same direction, when sometimes I can't even get 4 people to agree to go in the same direction. So, his ability to do that is really inspiring. Um, but there's all things around that. Oh, someone's asking if I could share my contact slide. Let me do that while you go on to the next question.
I'll also be sending a follow-up email with all of that information afterwards. So if you didn't grab it, it'll also be there. Just wanted to say.
Perfect. Okay, so the next question is, should leadership strategies change when dealing with friends or family?
No. And I can say that pretty confidently because I worked for about, 4 years on the same team as my wife. And she actually wound up at one point, she reported to someone who reported to me. So it definitely made for interesting conversations around the house. But I wouldn't change anything. And I'll say this because if I would change something, that would kind of say that I didn't really respect that person. And that's why I wouldn't change anything.
That makes sense. Okay, one final question so far. On my job search, I got the question, what is your leadership style? How should a job seeker best answer this question?
So the question you were asked is, what is your leadership style? That's a tough one. And I'll say that it's a tough one because I'm wondering why they're asking that question. Right? Like, oh, well, I'm the kind of leader that walks into the room and screams at everyone and tells them nobody's going home until they get all their things done. Like, why would you say that? Like, what sort of an answer would you give to that question? I'm sure that's what was going through your mind as well. And I think having a reference point, though, of, okay, this is, I read the Jim Collins book, Leadership 2.0, and asked them a question on that. Okay, what is your leadership style? Well, I read this Jim Collins book, and that's, a style that I like. Have you read that book? And make it more of that, turning that around on to the people who are interviewing you, shows that you have a lot of knowledge about this. And, you could run through a few of those things through memory. Look, I'm authentic. I tell it like it is. And, I get the best out of people by letting them make good decisions, or helping them to make good decisions. And I take ownership of my bad decisions, and I let everyone know that we succeed or fail as a team. That's, pretty much how I would answer that question.
Okay, the feedback was they had the same thought, the turnaround. I used past examples of managers who mentored me really well.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, great. So that concludes the question time. Again, Preston, thank you so much. This has been a really engaging session. And like, just so everybody knows, like Nina said, she will follow up in your inbox with all of Preston's contact info, as well as the recording of the video. So do you want to close us out with any final thoughts, Preston?
Yeah, look, I really appreciate everyone's time here listening to me talk. So I do appreciate it. I hope you can take 1 or 2 things away from this, and now you have a couple more books to put on your bookshelf.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye, all.